Good morning, faculty, family, friends, and members of the graduating class of 2012. I am pleased to introduce our student commencement speaker for the class of 2012, Chris Severn. Chris spent his time at Cal as an active member of Jericho Comedy, for which he served as head producer this past year. Besides goofing off on stage, Chris also led the Remedy Music Project last year, participated in the first Presbyterian College Fellowship all 4 years, volunteered as a coach for the First Tee of Oakland, and spent an enlightening semester abroad in Spain. Between his sophomore and junior year, Chris worked as a shoe salesman at the Sports Authority and prides himself on selling the most shoes in the month of July. Although he plans to begin a job in healthcare consulting this fall, he is escaping next week for a summer adventure in Brazil to tutor English, from which he may never come back. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Chris Severn.
How's everybody doing? Good? Good. I thought I was here to get the citation, but I guess I'll give a speech. I'd like to start off by saying it's an honor to speak to you today, the formidable, fresh, and fine graduating class of 2012. Today is truly your day to sit back and relax and celebrate with your family and friends. No more problem sets, no more lecture slides, and no more finals. That being said, please take out your eye clickers. I'll be asking questions along the way. We all took different paths to get to this point. For some of you, you knew you were intended business the moment you stepped foot in 8th grade. Others of you overcame the astounding selectivity to transfer in as juniors. Some of you are military veterans. Others are veterans of the freshman and sophomore business club. Many of you came from overseas, and maybe some of you aren't business majors at all, in which case you're in the wrong ceremony and feeling thoroughly confused. For all of you, getting to the seat you're in right now began a long time ago. It took outstanding grades, late nights working on group projects, patience, free printing, and early mornings working on group projects. Whatever it took, you had to earn this seat, and I encourage you to enjoy it for the entire duration of my speech. For myself, the road here was winding. If you knew me freshman year, you're probably surprised that I'm not speaking at the undeclared ceremony today. My first class in college was called Earthquakes in Your Backyard. In that class, I learned how to respond effectively in a disaster situation. And while I'm not a geology major, that proved essential after my first finance midterm. Some of you out there, yeah. I then found myself in ancient Greek mythology, where I learned the qualities of heroes like Odysseus, Perseus, Bono, and Jeremy Lin. Then, as fate would have it, I found my way to all of you in Haas. Together, we learned the 4 Ps of Haas. If you remember them, feel free to say them with me. Number 1, please don't call me Professor Ross. Even if I am making eye contact and wearing an orange shirt. Number 2, promptly arrive to Professor Robinson's class. Number 3, PowerPoint. Number 4, prepare for job interviews. We learned weird acronyms like CAPM, WAC, and GAP. But what I want to share with you today is some simple insight I learned on leadership during my time at Haas. As all of you remember, Haas experienced some shocking tragedies earlier in the year that challenged both students and faculty. I remember the day after the shooting in the fall, classes had returned to normal. I was in the Haas undergraduate study lounge at 8 p.m., pretending to be studious with some others. I looked up just as Dean Lyons popped his head through the door. He hesitantly walked in, and all of us just sort of stared, shocked, surprised. And with a look of genuine concern on his face, he said, "Just wanted to see if everyone's holding up all right." We smiled, said yes, he smiled, said good to hear, and left. I learned by example at Haas that great leaders don't just sit in plush offices and play business chess. They internalize the problems of their stakeholders and they act on them. Great leaders can speak in terms of consumers, factory workers, or subordinates while remembering them for what they are, people. That day, Dean Lyons must have had a pile of concerns at his feet, a criminal investigation, a national media story, and the reputation of his school, to name a few. Yet he was calm, composed, and talking one-on-one with his students. There's no doubt that you'll be leaders in business, government, or nonprofits. The question is, what kind of leader will you choose to be? If there's one thing I learned in Greek mythology, it's that a hero is someone that simply does the honorable thing in the pressure of a difficult situation. Our generation is calling for these heroes, those that'll say, I don't agree with these labor practices, or I won't give this customer a loan that they can't pay back. Would you stand firm even if no one is standing with you? And will you surround yourselves with colleagues that will do the same? At Haas, I also came to understand that visionary leadership not only requires making tough decisions, but resolving to see them through. In 2002, when I was 12 years old, my dad told me he was leaving his company of 15 years to start a cable network from scratch. As a 7th grader, I knew nothing about the gravity of this decision. My mind was occupied by more important things, like Pokemon cards, or why my voice hadn't changed and others had. I did not realize that my dad had embarked empty-handed on the greatest risk of his professional career. In high school, while I spent my days playing Guitar Hero 2 in my pajamas, my dad was busy pitching his network to countless investors and cable operators, often hearing the same response, "You're crazy." I had no clue that 4 times within that span, his company found itself on the brink of running out of funding and closing up shop. I just knew that food was on the table. Fast forward 10 years, my dad recently sold his company, but not before turning it into a multi-million-dollar network on air in 5 million households. My education at Haas has allowed me to appreciate just how relentless my dad had to be to pull it off. Despite an economy that turned sour, the rise of competing entertainment options, and a pesky heart attack, he did it. I'm honest when I say I never fully appreciated his effort until I saw it through the lens of my business education. This is probably the first time he's ever heard me applaud it. Some would still call it crazy. He'd be the first to say it wasn't glamorous, but I'd describe it as heroic. Up until this point, the decisions you've made at Cal have rarely affected anyone beyond yourself. As you enter the business world, that $900 in your student group's budget will turn into $900,000, or for some of you working in investment banking, 9 gazillion. The stakes will be raised. Your reliability and integrity will be counted on by your employees, your family, your customers, and your boss. If there's ever a time to start considering yourself a hero, that time is now. Our Haas education has prepared us to act heroically in the office. It has taught us to think beyond ourselves, beyond the dollar bills, and challenge the status quo. We will be the movers and the shakers. We will innovate and we will lead. We will have to decide to press the big red button. Whether you're going into the ABCs, accounting, baseball, or crime fighting, or heading in a completely opposite direction, I encourage you to continue to hold yourselves to the highest standards of ethics and excellence towards the people you serve. Many of you will be happy to hear that great leadership is not graded on the Haas curve. The course of action will rarely be black and white, and I congratulate you today because getting to this point was not easy, and I invite us, the class of 2012, to show that business leaders do not choose actions because they're easy, but because they're right. Congratulations, and thank you.